Imagine a Mother's Day gathering. Multiple generations coming together, kids running around, good food, and then two toddlers just vanish.
Gone without a trace.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened back in 1992 in rural Mississippi.
The case of Krenice Jones and Leone Allen, it's been unsolved for over 3 decades.
Right, and today we're going to really try to dig into this case.
Yeah, we're going to look at the police reports, FBI files, and even talk about some of the rumors surrounding the case.
Okay, so we've got a lot of different perspectives to consider here, and it seems like everyone who was there remembers things a little differently.
It's a classic example of the Rashomon effect.
Yeah, which can make getting to the truth pretty difficult.
Absolutely, and in this case, it's made it really hard to figure out what actually happened to Krenice and Leone.
So to understand how two toddlers could just disappear, we need to first understand the setting where it happened.
Okay, so picture this. We're in rural Mississippi, just outside of a small town called Woodville. And the Jackson family has this compound. It's like a row of houses, a grocery store, even a dirt road leading off into the woods.
Now it's pretty spread out.
It is. It's a big area. And back then, it wasn't unusual for kids to kind of roam free playing in the woods or down by the creek.
Ah, I see. So it wouldn't have been unusual to not see the kids for a while.
Exactly. And that's part of what makes this case so puzzling.
So let's talk about the kids who disappeared.
Yeah.
We have 3-year-old Krenice Jones visiting her mom and sister.
Right. And 2-year-old Leone Allen, who was staying with his uncle and his uncle's wife.
Okay, and just to be clear, neither child had been to Woodville before.
No, this was their first time visiting.
And I understand that both families had some, internal things going on.
Yeah, Krenice's parents, Carla and Gregory, they had a really rocky relationship. There were accusations of infidelity, even a restraining order at one point.
Wow. So already some tension there.
Definitely. And then Leone's uncle Glenn, there were rumors about him maybe being involved in some shady business, possible drug debts, and, that can bring a whole other set of problems.
So you've got these two families, both dealing with their own issues, and then they all come together for this Mother's Day potluck.
Right. Trying to have a nice family day, and then the kids disappear.
It's like something out of a nightmare.
It really is. As the afternoon went on, people started realizing they hadn't seen the kids in a while.
At first, I'm guessing they probably thought the kids were just playing.
Yeah, people assumed they were playing hide and seek or had wandered off to a different part of the property.
But then as time passed and it started getting dark, panic set in.
Exactly. The family searched everywhere, the houses, the grocery store, even under a parked school bus. But no Krenice, no Leone.
Like they vanished in thin air.
And that's where the mystery really begins. The disappearance sent shockwaves through the town, and with so much ground to cover, local law enforcement brought in the FBI.
So you have federal agents on the scene trying to figure out what happened to these two toddlers. It must have been chaotic.
Yeah, it was a massive investigation. Imagine investigators everywhere. Bloodhounds from Angola prison were even brought in.
Wow, they brought in bloodhounds all the way from Angola.
Yeah, they were trying to track the children's scent.
And did they find anything?
The bloodhounds picked up Krenice's scent and followed it to the road near the grocery store.
So that suggests maybe someone drove off with her?
Right. That was a big concern, but with so many people coming and going from the gathering that day, it was impossible to tell who might have been driving.
And like we talked about earlier, everyone had different memories of the day.
Exactly. And those conflicting accounts made it really hard to piece together what actually happened.
So did investigators have any leads at all?
Family members, neighbors, even people who just stopped by the grocery store that day. They all had different versions of what they saw and who they talked to.
It's like a giant puzzle with pieces that don't quite fit.
And then you add in the rumors that started going around.
Oh, yeah. Small towns and rumors, they go hand in hand.
Right. Was it just an accident, or did something more sinister happen?
I mean, naturally, people start looking at the adults involved.
Exactly. And Krenice's father, Gregory, he immediately came under scrutiny.
Given their history, that makes sense.
He had a history of volatile behavior, and some people thought he might have taken Krenice.
Out of anger or jealousy or something.
But Gregory insisted he was working in Louisiana when the kids disappeared.
Did he have an alibi?
He did. He said he had witnesses who could confirm he was at work the whole time, and the FBI did eventually clear him as a suspect.
But even when someone's cleared, I imagine that suspicion can still linger.
Absolutely, especially in a small town.
And then there was Leone's Uncle Glenn, those rumors about his possible drug dealings.
Right. Some people wondered if maybe the children were kidnapped because Glenn owed someone money.
Like maybe it was some kind of revenge plot?
It's a terrifying thought.
It is, and the investigators looked into that angle, But they couldn't find any evidence connecting Glenn to any criminal activity.
And Glenn and his wife Leola, they both said they had nothing to do with the children disappearing.
And of course, we can't forget about Leone's father, Terrell, who was stationed in Alaska at the time.
Right, thousands of miles away. But that didn't stop some people from wondering if maybe he was somehow involved.
Like maybe he orchestrated the whole thing from afar.
The FBI confirmed Terrell's alibi, though, so he was ruled out.
But for Leone's mother, Lavette, the doubts probably still lingered.
Especially since she and Terrell were no longer together.
So we've got a family gathering, 2 missing toddlers, a whole bunch of conflicting stories, and a list of potential suspects.
And none of it adds up to any clear answers.
It sounds like the perfect recipe for a mystery that just keeps getting more and more complicated.
And that's exactly what happened as weeks turned into months and months turned into years. The case went cold.
And these poor families were left with no answers.
But even with the official investigation stalling, the families never gave up hope. They kept searching for Krenice and Leone, hoping that one day they'd find out what happened.
Years passed, and it seemed like the case had gone cold. But then in 1999, there was a new development.
A woman from Buffalo, New York, she reached out to Carla Krenice's mother.
Okay, and what did she say?
This woman believed that her daughter had been swapped with Krenice back in '92.
Swapped? You mean like kidnapped and replaced?
Yeah, she thought it was part of some kind of foster care kidnapping ring.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty wild theory.
It does, but for Carla, any lead was worth looking into.
Of course, after all those years without answers, I can't imagine giving up hope.
The FBI, they investigated the woman's claims, even did DNA testing. Unfortunately, it turned out the woman's daughter wasn't Krenice.
Another dead end.
It was heartbreaking for everyone involved.
So the case went cold again. But then in 2013, there was another twist.
Carla and Lavette Leone's mother, they reconnected.
After all those years.
Yeah, they'd both been through so much, and they still believe that Terrell Leone's father knew something.
Lavette had a theory of her own, didn't she?
She did. She actually believed that Carla was involved somehow.
Involved in the disappearance.
Yeah, Lavette suspected that Krenice might actually be Leone's half-sister.
So she thought Carla had a reason to keep Krenice's true father a secret.
Exactly, and Lavette believed that Carla had let Terrell take Krenice to hide that secret.
Wow, this case just keeps getting more and more complicated.
And there's more. Lavette had been talking to a man named Eric online.
Okay.
And she was convinced that Eric was actually Leone.
She believed she'd found her son after all these years.
She had found him through a background search website, and there were all these details about his life that connected back to Terrell.
So she really thought she'd found Leone.
And she also believed that a young woman connected to Eric, a woman named Brittany, was Krenice.
Another possible connection.
Lavette even pointed out that Brittany had a scar on her ear similar to a scar that Krenice had.
So they did more DNA testing.
And they did, hoping for a breakthrough.
And what happened?
The results showed that Brittany was not Krenice.
So another lead that went nowhere.
But Carla, she still held on to the belief that Brittany was her daughter.
Even after the DNA results came back negative.
She couldn't let go of that hope.
What about Eric? Did he ever agree to talk about any of this?
We tried to reach out to him for this deep dive, but we weren't able to get in touch with him.
And Terrell, what did he have to say about Lavette's theory?
He claimed that Eric had met with Lavette and convinced her that he wasn't her son.
But Lavette disputed that.
Yeah, she still believes Eric is Leone.
So much uncertainty in this case, so many unanswered questions.
And unfortunately, that's where things stand today.
It's a heartbreaking story.
Yeah.
And it's incredible how, even after all these years, there's still no resolution.
But even with all the dead ends and the conflicting information, there are still people fighting to find out what happened to Krenice and Leone.
The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, they're still looking into this case, right?
That's right. They're reanalyzing the evidence, conducting interviews, hoping to find something that was missed all those years ago.
It's hard to imagine what these families have gone through all this time not knowing what happened to their children.
It's a tragedy, and it really highlights how important it is to never give up hope.
Maybe someday, someone will come forward with new information that could finally crack this case open.
That's what we all hope for.
This case really shows how even seemingly ordinary gatherings can turn into nightmares.
It reminds us that these kinds of tragedies can happen anywhere, and how important it is to be vigilant and to look out for one another.
If you're listening and you have any information about the disappearance of Krenice and Leone, please reach out to the authorities.
Even the smallest detail could make a difference after all these years.
We can only hope that someday the families will finally get the answers they deserve.
And that Krenice and Leone will finally be brought home.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into one of the most perplexing missing persons cases in recent history.
It's been a difficult story to tell, but it's a story that needs to be told.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into some of history's most fascinating and often forgotten mysteries.